Today on the Toddcast, we have the privilege to talk to the tremendous Thom Jennings. We met Thom a number of years ago at a Todd show, and we connected immediately. He was such a devoted fan with engaging stories that we knew we needed to interview him. As a lifelong music fan, he displays a clear passion when interviewing a long list of people in different stages of their music career, by many names both big and small.
With Thom being a longtime editorialist of local publications, he also maintains his YouTube channel, Tuning In with Thom Jennings. As well as interviewing almost every member of Utopia, he has interviewed many others in and out of the Todd-o-sphere, and we are happy that he could be here with us today. Join us as we have a candid conversation with Thom Jennings and learn about his Todd journey. All right, so let's talk Todd. Start from the beginning, Thom.
Oh, from the beginning. So are
from
you
the beginning?
Yeah,
like,
Todd? Why is he
Why Todd, man?
oh goodness, you're gonna force me to get a tad on the introspective side.
No, that's what we do here.
Well, first show was October 31st, 1982. So I just had the 40th anniversary of my first Todd Rundgren show, and that was a Utopia show on Halloween night in Rochester, New York, at a venue called the Auditorium Theater, and it was the Suits tour from the Network album, which still really, I mean, that album is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into the show with very low expectations. I was actually an usher at the venue, so I used to see a lot of live concerts, and I was like, Utopia. I think I'd heard of them. The only song that I remember knowing by Todd Rundgren was "Time Heals." It wasn't even like "Hello, It's Me" or "I Saw the Light." I didn't even realize that was him until much later. But the venue was not very full. It was maybe a quarter full because I think Halloween night's always a tough night for a live show. And the band just was on fire. And I just really fell in love with the music. So that was my first exposure. And then, I mean, to be real candid, I mean, when I was 16 years old, I had a kid on the way. And then a kid was born when I was 17 years old and tried to make it work with the young lady. And she actually attended the show with me, strangely enough. We had the kid. We wound up breaking up. She was originally from Denver, Colorado. I was from Rochester, New York, and then she took my child, moved to Denver, Colorado. So I had this separation. And as I was going through this kind of really tough emotional time, I found a copy of Back to the Bars in my roommate's album collection. And it was not long after I'd seen Utopia, and I noticed that Utopia played on, half the album. And the songs, like Real Man, because I was going through a really emotional time, and what the meaning of the verb to love, the songs and the themes really kind of comforted me, because I think a lot of times, especially as a man, when you go through a breakup, it's difficult, and you're supposed to be macho and move on and everything like that. And I felt I was a bit of a sensitive guy. So lyrically, it just captured me. And he said the music got me through a very tough time. And then I wound up, talking to some other people that were Todd fans, and people would, back in those days, loan each other cassettes and all that stuff. And I happened to work at a place that was really close to a record store. And a lot of Todd's early stuff was bargain bin stuff. So you could build up a Todd collection fairly quickly, because there'd just be bins of cutouts and everything like that. So every now and then I'd find a new record, pop it on, and then it just kind of grew from there.
And so it feels like the running theme here, Zach, that when we talk with other Todd fans, is like you really almost like grew into the lyrics as well as the music. It came to you at that point where you needed to hear those things, or maybe you didn't even know what it fully meant until later on, but you knew it was something you needed to hear at that time. So,
yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, obviously, like, all human beings like music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, but like for some reason, like everybody has their band, everybody has their top tier favorite artist of all time. But like when you talk to people that Todd is their favorite, it's always like this like crazy magical story. Like, you know what I mean? It's not just like, oh, I listened to it and he was cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, like,
or even people who like to use Hello, It's Me, or Can We Still Be Friends as examples.
Yeah.
People who, had lovers that was their song, and they get
Yeah.
taken back to that place, much like you were saying earlier.
Yeah. And also like with our dynamic, as us being younger guys, our story's a lot different than most Todd fans. Yours is different than mine because you were introduced at such a young age, as I was too, but it wasn't like kind of just like, oh, okay, yeah, he's cool, whatever.
Yeah.
And then like, later when I was a teenager, I learned about more about Todd and was like, whoa, okay, this guy's different,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
well, the advantage of being a Todd collector is that there's so many tentacles to it.
yeah,
You collect, like a band like Boston, who I love, or Styx, who's another group. The groups that I grew up with that were really big when I was in high school. They had catalogs, but the catalogs were very similar. The songs were very similar in theme. You've got with Todd, so even at that point, which is 1982, you've got the whole prog rock stuff. You got the pop stuff, the
yep,
power pop stuff.
yep,
You got ballads, you got
Yeah.
rockers, you got blues, maybe
That's
one country
interesting.
song or whatever.
Well, you
But
got into you
it's
got into Todd like right when like Tepte
yep,
came out,
yep.
and that's very interesting. I can't even because Zach and I or I can't speak for Zach, but Zach and I have the benefit of hindsight, where even when I was a young child and I was listening to Todd, he was the artist formerly known as TRI at the time. And even
yep,
then he had another 25 years of music
yeah,
prior to that. That honestly, like, I've never said this on the podcast before. Zach knows it though, but like I was not down with Utopia for a very, very, very long time. Die
mhm,
hard, solo for life, TR fan, up until I saw Chasm at the Run Good Radio in 2019,
yep,
and I heard like, this is embarrassing. I'm gonna keep it in the podcast though, Zach. This is embarrassing, but the first time I heard Caravan, I was like, whoa. I was like, I
yeah,
slept on this. And it felt like
yeah,
a whole other reemergence for me as a Todd fan, because there was this, here was the, self-titled Utopia album, the network album, as you said. I just call it self-titled. I guess that's the cool kids like you refer to it as that. I'm gonna start doing that now. And then like Oblivion, Oblivion, it's all these other tunes where I was like, this is great. Like, I was so stuck in my ways of Healing is the best album. Nearly
yeah,
Human is the other best album, that I'm so happy to have that. So, but it's interesting, you came into it at a similar time where you still had another decade's worth. And with the conversation of the tentacles, I like that,
yeah.
because even with my understanding of a Boston or a Styx, other than the fact that, like, what's the name of that guy from Styx?
Dennis DeYoung, Tommy
Vince
Shaw.
Young.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Uh, that like has an abrupt ending to it, right? Unless you
Yeah.
dig further. With
Yeah,
Todd,
well, yeah, it's different. I mean, it's a different experience because, Styx was they were a band out of Chicago. They didn't really work with a lot of other people. I mean, the one guy went and played with Damn Yankees, but I mean, even you're talking Utopia too. And back in the day, there really was a true schism. I don't know if anybody's ever talked about this on the podcast, but I remember it vividly. And I was just having a conversation with a friend not too long ago about this. But there were people that identified as utopians,
well,
and then there were Todd people, and there were Todd fans that really resented Utopia as if it was like
yeah,
this side project that was taking away from their ability to have more Todd Rundgren solo music. And I mean, I was in the utopian camp from day one, and I loved the big. Remember, again, we're talking. I grew up with Styx, Boston, Triumph, those kinds of bands. So Utopia was very palatable to me because I was used to listening to that kind of music. I mean, even
Yeah.
Beatles, you have all those, but the group
mhm,
dynamic, and I love Chasm's voice, all that. I got a
mhm,
dog named Chasm, but anyhow, um, and then it was weird because I really became immersed in the Utopia stuff, and then it was later that I started going towards some of the Todd stuff. And the first time I heard Healing, I thought that was the most boring album I've ever heard in my life ever. I'm like,
that was
what
my
is this? I mean,
that was my dad's fall off point too.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
But I love
he
that record now. But
yeah.
at the time I didn't get it. I'm like, oh, this guy writes these great rock songs and these great
Yeah.
pop songs. What's this? Sleepy music and everything. And then, here my favorite Todd song at the time too was "Time Heals," which was the insert on 45. So
Right.
I was expecting an album that was more like that, and I think that kind of shocked me as well. Like I'm like, where's the other "Time Heals" on this record? But in retrospect, so I mean, Healing's just. I mean, it's a masterpiece, but it's one of those records you have to find it at the right time, find it in the right
Yeah.
mind space, and once you get it, it's a beautiful thing. I hated No World Order when that first came out too, so
That's the
and
third
now
best
I love that
album. What are
record.
you doing?
Like when I was
Like
growing
you're
up,
like hating all the best albums. You're hating Healing. You're hating Nearly
I
Human. No, you didn't
I,
hate
I
Nearly
don't anymore. I'm just saying that those
No
were
World Order.
records
Those
that
are
I
the
had a
best
hard
three,
time.
dude.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, I have kind of
I
the same story. It's like I love all those albums now, but like growing up, I was like a punk rock kid, love
Yeah.
punk rock and prog, which is weird. Slow, weird, long music and fast, loud music. But I knew the hits of Todd, and then I learned about Utopia, the very first, Todd Rundgren's Utopia. I was like, holy shit, what is this? And then listen to Wizard and whatever. And then I heard, you know, the '90s stuff, and like I was just kind of like not into it. But I was also 14 years old. I was just like, I want to listen to Misfits and Minor Threat and King Crimson, and like that's like what I was listening to back then. And then now I'm like, this is like his best work. It's just weird how like music is changed, like your liking is changed by like at the moment. Like I love jazz now. When I was 15 or 16 years old, and 30-year-old me said, "Hey, you're gonna like jazz when you're 30," I'd be like, "No, fuck you. You ain't gonna like jazz." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you'll just wait and see." It's just weird how that works.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Man,
there's some records that take 2, 3, 4 spins. I feel like I mean, I have a massive record collection, CDs, everything. I mean, for years I was getting reviewer copies, the whole 9 yards. But and it's like there's some records you put on the first time you hear them, you're like, holy shit, this is a classic. And this, AC/DC Back in Black. First time I hear it, like, wow, this album is incredible, beginning to end. But there's other albums where I feel like there's so many subtleties and so much stuff going on that you don't really absorb it in the first take. And No World Order there's a lot going on in that record. I mean, there's a lot of changes lyrically. It can be very challenging. The whole fascist Christ thing, worldwide epiphany,
cry, baby.
and
Ola Boda, feeling older.
But that's
what
I said. Well, and then the other thing too is I think sometimes you appreciate an album more when you've seen some of the songs performed live, and the stuff he's done from No World Order live, or the Individualist too, Arena. A lot of those records do a lot better. I mean, I like them much better in a concert setting than I do in recorded format. But you know what? Once you've heard a great live version and you listen to the studio version, at least this is my experience, it brings you back to that great live version.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, so continue on with your Todd timeline, and then we can talk the live stuff, because I'm interested to hear more of your perspective.
Well, goodness, my Todd timeline. So, I really got into Utopia, and then of course they decide to break up, and, right, just as I'm starting to love them. And actually, I remember I really started the fandom started to get stoked. A young lady by the name of Susie, and she's still friends of mine. Actually, we didn't see each other for 35 years, and we just saw each other at a Todd concert for the first time on the Utopia reunion tour, which was really cool. But she was a huge fan, and she got me a copy of Acapella about a year before it was released, because there was a whole big, even going back to the Utopia thing. Utopia, if you know the history of the band, Bearsville Records was like, Todd, we don't want this Utopia garbage. We just want your solo work. Like, we have no interest in this 4-piece. So Utopia had to go do their thing, and then Todd made Acapella, and the record label was like, we're not putting this out. This is too weird. but I got a copy of it, and the record just really blew me away. And I remember the first time I heard "Pretending to Care," and I was like, "This is the greatest song I've ever heard." You know, just lyrically and emotionally, and I was just like, "Man, this guy gets it. Like, this guy really gets heartache or whatever." So I went and saw acapella the first night in Kingston, New York, with my friend Susie, and an 11 voice orchestra,
Mm.
and the show was just so much fun. And as the years progressed, going to see Todd shows, through the '90s and whatnot, and honestly, the '90s, I think of all of his musical decades, is probably, I don't know, I think it's the barest on many levels.
Okay.
Um,
Flesh that out.
well, so you get Nearly Human, '89, just an incredible album. Now to back up a little bit, the Bearsville era is very prolific. He's putting out solo records, he's producing records, he's doing Utopia records. I mean, it was a good time to be a Todd fan because there was a lot to pick from, whether it's an album he played guitar on, whatever.
Sure.
And so then, the whole thing with then Utopia splits up. It kind of goes silent for a little while. He was doing these solo tours with just acoustic guitar and piano, which I thought were great. I mean, I loved those shows because he wasn't under the pressure of having to promote an album. So, the set lists were pretty cool. And then Nearly Human comes out, and it's like, holy shit, but that was 4 years after acapella. So he comes out with this great album, phenomenal tour, big band, all the hits, everything done really well. And then,
When I was a kid, I used to call that Vegas Todd. 'Cause that's how
man,
it felt.
yeah,
That's how it
yeah,
felt.
yeah. The Nearly Human band was a little more Vegasy than the Second Wind band. The Second Wind band had some more balls to it. I mean, but Prairie Prince on drums as opposed to Michael Urbano. It just had Jesse Gress makes his first appearance on Second Wind. I think he was important. Lyle Workman, great guitarist, but again, more Vegasy in terms of his playing style and everything. I mean, he went to play with Sting, for God's sake. So so the Second Wind tour to me is still one of the greatest. That band was just I mean, if you ever hear the Live in Chicago recording,
Yeah.
it's the best live recording he's ever done.
I 100%. I 100%
Yeah.
agree.
But then, Second Wind. Second Wind is there's a lot more. I'm almost up to 200 shows at this point. But the Second Wind record is the third in that Warner Brothers deal. So we had acapella, Nearly Human, and then Second Wind. So that was the last time he ever recorded for a major label. So then we got to wait a little while for No World Order. So that thing comes out, and you're like, what the hell, rap? Really? Because I mean, you think about it. Young white guy rap, like we didn't like rap. This is maybe the only rap song guys my age listened to was like Walk This Way with Run DMC. It just wasn't the kind of music we listened to. So it was a little bit tough to kind of get used to. And then he did that crazy tour with the Pod. And then he does The Individualist. And The Individualist was another record that for some reason got hung up in production. It first came out as it wasn't a CD interactive because that was No World Order, but the early pressings of Individualist had visuals that went with the record.
Yeah, it was a CDR. It was a CDR.
So CDR. So then there was something to do with some of the visuals on the CDR in the US where they didn't have the rights to them. So you could only get the CD as an import, and it was like ridiculously overpriced.
Wow.
And I couldn't afford it, so I had to wait 4 or 5 months for the CD to come out. Here's a funny Cleveland story. So I couldn't get the CD, because this is pre-internet. It's not like you could just go out. Well, it wasn't pre-internet because they were handing out AOL discs back then. But, you had to be kind of rich to be on the internet or go to the library. And I went to go see the show at Nautica stage, and he was doing The Individualist. And I didn't have the record yet. But the guy next to me clearly did. And he is drunk off his ass, singing every song from The Individualist. And I remember looking at my buddy going, man, I go, how's this motherfucker have a copy of this record? And I don't have it. And he's ruining it for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was awful. So I kind of dug that. But again, I mean, think about that. You know, you went from a period where stuff is coming out every 6 months to a year to 3 years to 4 years to whatever. And you know, Todd would pack some things in between, but you know, and then the whole Tiki Lounge tour, it just totally lost me. I did not like With a Twist at all.
Wow.
One Long Year, great record.
You
Partially,
want
I
to
mean,
talk about
there's some
albums
good
that
good.
had to grow on me? That was that.
Well, you know, it doesn't. The thing is, like, even with the new one, Space Force, a lot of people have said, oh, you know, it's a bunch of collaborations, and I heard some of the advanced singles, and I was like, I don't know what to expect out of this record, but it made sense when you put the whole thing together. Um,
Yeah.
to me, One Long Year, the fact that it has buffalo grass on it, and he could have just farted for the rest of the record, and I still love that record because buffalo grass to me is
It's a good song.
that encapsulates everything that I love about Todd and Utopia. Like if Utopia was still together, Buffalo Grass should have been their big radio hit when it
See,
came
I could,
out.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I'm a little soured on the Buffalo Grass probably because I've heard it so much. For me, I have the same response though with Where Does the Time Go? That's the track for me on that album where I was like, man could have farted the entire time, which he did with Jerk. Song Jerk. I remember
You're
I listened to that.
fast and
Yeah,
I like it.
like
You're
it
fast.
because
It's like how long did
Oh,
it take you to write that one, Todd?
yeah. I was playing it for somebody the other day, and I was like, I go, yeah, listens to post grunge once, and then puts on ISP, and they're like, oh yeah, he's really taken from the influence of the time, and I go, oh no, wait, I'm not done. Listen to the Nine Inch Nails once, and I put on Jerk, and they're like, this is Todd Rundgren.
Yeah. Well, that was remember that was at that Patronet
Yeah,
period too,
yeah,
which man, if you look at that business model,
yeah.
it really on paper it just sounds amazing. You know, you
Yeah.
put out some new stuff, you share it
Well,
with your
we
fans,
did
and
a
blah blah blah.
whole Zach and I's magnum opus is our Patronet episode.
Ooh,
We
I'll
were
have to go
really
back.
obsessed with Patronet for
Oh
years.
yeah.
We
Were
wanted
you
to
a
be
member
cool.
back in the '90s?
I was.
Nice. That's
Do you have any of the swag from back then?
Dude, I have so much stuff. I just don't even know what to do with it. I might just have boxes of it. I got a garage just
wow.
filled with memorabilia from a lot of artists. Photo pass is just stuff strewn over. So I did lose some stuff when I did finally get divorced to, you know, my evil ex-wife, but I definitely still have some of the Patronet stuff, especially the CDs. But
But yeah,
you know,
my dad said something recently, like a month after we put out the Patronet episode. Is Todd just the biggest capitalist, or is he just broke? And I go, I'm pretty sure he's still paying for Patronet, man.
yeah. Well, in the book, I mean, he really exposes that was a difficult
Yeah.
time for him financially. I mean,
I actually
you
haven't.
know,
I've never read the book.
ooh, interesting.
I'm young. I've got an entire lifetime, if you catch my drift. So I'm waiting for a rainy day to read the book.
I got something to say about that book, and Tom, you'll like this.
Yeah.
So James, you should read the book because it's very good.
I'm 29. I got a whole lifetime to read it. Is what I'm saying.
So I have a hard time reading. I know how to read, but I can't like zero in and like sit down and physically like sit and read. So then Todd, my hero, writes a book. Well, I have to buy it. We'll see if I actually read it. When I get the book, each page is a chapter, as you know.
Yep.
And there's just 3 paragraphs. The first 2 is the story, and the third paragraph's like the reflection as an old man, like after the fact, like this happened. This is now what I think about it. And I liked that because I actually read the entire book. It was awesome. So I met Todd during the Individualist tour at the book signing in Cleveland, and I got in line. I went up to him and I said, "Hey Todd, good to see you again. Whatever, you know, all that jazz." He also complimented my outfit, which was very cool. And I said, "Hey, you know, at me, I'm not a great reader. It's hard for me to read and sit down and focus. And it's really cool that my hero, wrote a book that fits my reading style." And he goes, "I wrote it because I'm the exact same way." And I was like, what the fuck? It was
Yeah.
so cool. It was so cool, like having that connection. And I have a really cool picture. It's because I gave my phone to the worker, and because she was taking phones and like taking pictures of everybody when they were like with him. And there's this awesome photo, and it's Todd looking at me, and he's like, his eyes are wide, and he's like got his like his mouth's open, his teeth are sticking out, and he's smiling. And I'm talking to him like this, and he's like so like into it. It's like a perfect picture. I want to get it framed and like blown up and like get it in my house. But it was just like such a cool moment because I met Todd 3 times, and that was because of that interaction. It was probably my favorite time meeting him. It was just
Yeah,
amazing.
he's an interesting cat. I mean, he can come off as very frothy, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Mm.
And I remember once interviewing Chasm. Actually, he was backstage at a show in Columbus for Healer, and Chasm I think was doing a solo show in Buffalo. So I write for the newspaper in Buffalo and covered the music scene there. So I set it up, like what the hell, I'll be at the show anyway. So if you want, we'll spend some time together. And I talked about Todd, and he says, yeah, I've worked with Todd for a long time, but he's not the kind of guy that's gonna, call you on your birthday or give you hugs. Like, he's just not a real sensitive guy. And he says, and I am. So at times it can be very difficult. But
Oh.
but the reality is, it's like that's what seems so contradictory, because his lyrics and even the way he writes some of the stuff that he writes in his book, which can be very raw, uh, seems to be almost contradictory to kind of how he
Yeah,
is with people.
externalizes.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's weird. And it's funny because like some of the stuff he writes in his book, he sort of comes off as a little bit of a dick, where I'll be like, he said some pretty nasty things about Moogie Klingman, and he clearly hates his sister as well. But you know what? I got a sister I hate, so I get it. Um but he also writes about the part in that book that really struck me, because I went through a similar situation, was where he talked about Liv and what it was like to be separated from Liv, and
Yeah.
how much pain that caused him. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I went through that with my oldest son. He was taken from me. His mother moved across the country, and I didn't get to see him for years. And it's tough, man. It's a gut wrenching situation. And the rawness and emotion that he wrote about it, I was like, wow. But it's always everything. I feel like the weird thing is Todd is so relatable on so many levels, but as in a
Yeah.
one-to-one situation, he can just really come off as being kind of arrogant or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's him. That's not him. I think that goes back to kind of, saying, well, this is my reading style. I feel like Todd has that kind of attention thing, and he's talked about that with the ADHD and how he had to take Ritalin to write something, anything, all that. So he's a very complex guy, and I think that's what we love about him. He's predictably unpredictable.
Yeah.
So tell us about the first time that you met Todd. You told me this story, and it's my favorite thing that I've ever
Is
heard.
this was this the one with Vince Welnick? Are you talking about the one with
The one at the bar. The one at the bar. It was
Yeah, so
83.
yeah. So it's funny. I live very close to there now, and I just bought this house a year ago, and it's about 2 or 3 miles from the place where I met him. Which is kind of funny how things come full circle. But they were doing a show in the area, and I was a line cook at a restaurant, and the guy that was delivering our lettuce says, it was raining, and I go, oh man, it's raining. This sucks. I'm going to an outdoor concert tonight. He's like, oh, who are you going to see? And I said, oh, I'm going to go see Utopia and the Tubes. Like, to me, it was, even though Utopia was the opener, he's like, oh, Utopia and the Tubes? Yeah, I was just delivering produce down at this place in Batavia where they're staying, blah, blah. So I was like, holy shit, I found out what hotel they were staying at. And so I convinced my buddy who was driving to go to the hotel after the show. So we did, and we went to the hotel bar. I was underage at the time, but I had a fake ID. But, the band, first the Tubes pull up, and they all get off the bus one by one. They all said hello. They were really polite and everything. And Fee Waybill stopped and chatted with me for a little while. And then, he goes in and then we go hang out in the bar. And then I sit at a table with Roger Steen, Chasm Sultan, and Roger Steen's from the Tubes and Prairie Prince. And we're just sitting here having drinks. And then Todd walks into the bar. And I'm just like, I'm dumbstruck. I'm like, oh my God, I went pure Paul McCartney and Chris Farley on him. I'm like, hey Todd, my name's Thom Jennings. I'm your biggest fan in the whole world. And then my buddy Chris, who drove me there, walks up next to me and he goes, who's this guy next to you? Let me guess, the other biggest fan in the world. my buddy Chris goes, no, Todd, trust me, this guy is obsessed with you. So he was really cool. Vince Welnick, who later went on to play with the Dead, and he was with the Tubes at the time. He was playing the lounge piano, and Todd had a ukulele, which I thought was odd in retrospect because this is before he'd moved to Hawaii, so I didn't associate him as having a ukulele, and for some reason he was just carrying it around.
Okay.
And this I learned later this was like 2 days before him and Michelle had their first sexual experience because he wrote about that in the book. And I looked up the dates and it was 2 days after I had met him. And so then, he wanted to buy me a shot at some point, which was pretty cool. And then signed some stuff for me. And
oh man, that's so cool.
yeah. And then Vince Welnick sat at the bar with my buddy Chris because my buddy Chris used to take LSD like every day. Like he would buy LSD by sheets. And he kept taking it all the time. And Vince and him just talked about LSD, I guess.
Because they're from San Francisco. So what else
yes,
can
they're
do
from
other
San
than-
Francisco.
other than talking about LSD?
So Chris says to me, I go, what did you and Vince talk about? He goes, man, Vince, you know what they call it a trip, don't you, Tom? And I go, no. He goes, well, because you're eventually going to go to a final destination. This is why I take LSD every day, because I take my trips. And each trip gets me closer. And Vince, he made it. He doesn't even have to take LSD anymore.
Oh my God.
I go, really? Wow, that's incredible. And then he goes, yeah, but you know what? What bothers me is the guy chain smokes and he drinks like a fish. I feel like if you make it, you wouldn't have to do any of that, would you? And so the epilogue is there. Chris stopped doing LSD after that.
Oh yeah, because he realized it's probably all facade at that point.
Yeah, he's like, there is no final destination. I just become a chain smoking drinker.
Yeah, to me, it would seem like if someone would say, "Oh, I don't even need to take LSD." It's like with me, like I don't need to trip anymore. I got what I needed from it. Like that's what I think of as like the final destination. But I don't chain smoke and drink like a fish. So
no. And he said, I mean, Vince was a very troubled guy. I mean, Vince was, the thing about Vince is that I met him a bunch of times years later, and he used to get me backstage at Todd shows when he played with Todd, because Vince and Chasm Sultan are two people that never forget a name. Like you meet them once, and your name is committed to memory. Their name, they commit your name to memory. And so Vince, whenever he was on tour with Todd, I would just send word that I was back there and he would bring me backstage. And one time at the Nautic in Cleveland on the Nearly Human tour, I got backstage and I bought a bootleg Todd Rundgren t-shirt in the parking lot. And it was funny because the printing was a little off center. And I go to sit at a table. They got a bottle of Bushmills. Todd's sitting there drinking it. And I sit next to Vince. And Todd sits down and Vince goes, "Oh, Todd, this is my friend Tom." And he looks at me and he goes, "Nice shirt." Nice shirt. I was like, yeah. And I still have that empty bottle of Bushmills as well, which is a nice little memento from 1989.
That's pretty amazing. Killing a bottle of Bushmills with TR.
Yeah,
I probably would have kept it too.
In a bootleg shirt too. So yeah.
Did you keep the shirt?
I have no idea where the shirt is. I was much smaller back then, so I still do have some of my shirts from back in those days. I have like an original POV Oblivion.
You got the POV International Tour shirt?
It's the red one with the three goofy eyes on it.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the one with the Interocitor. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember that one. The one I got, it was red and it has 3 eyeballs, each looking different directions, and then it's got the pyramid or whatever in it, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty cool.
the is it the raw pyramid or is it the interocitor?
I don't know. You
Here,
got me.
I'll show you. I'll show you because I'm eyeing this shirt right now.
Well, somebody's selling one online right now that's a bootleg copy of it. No, it's not that one.
Not that one, but it's got the
No.
interocitor here is what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. That thing.
No, that's definitely not it.
Yeah. I want that shirt. They want too much for it. Ever since TR went into the Hall of Fame, man, it's
Unbelievable.
tough. It's tough to pick up these shirts. I had to pay. I spent $18 on a Todd 2001 shirt last night, and I was like, 3 years ago this would have been $9. What's going on? These aftermarket shirts are going up in price.
Well,
Also,
I was at
my reconstructed shirt.
I was at a celebrating David Bowie show in Buffalo on Saturday, and Todd canceled because he had laryngitis. So
Yeah, I
it's
heard about
literally
that.
the only show on the tour he's not going to be there. And I was covering the.
He canceled the
Spirit
Cincinnati
Heart.
show the night before that too.
Well, they postponed. He's going to do that one later.
Okay.
They just performed without him on, but they were still selling his shirts and stuff. So I almost bought one, but I was like, nah, if he's not showing up, I'm not buying his shirt. So, and I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony when he went in, and he didn't even go. So look at that. Look how devoted of a fan I am. I go places that even Todd won't go for himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zach was at the induction. I was
there.
at the Cincinnati show the night that he got inducted.
Yeah, I saw night before was in Canton, I think it was.
That's cool, yeah.
That's my Rochester accent, Canton.
But yeah, because I'm from Cincinnati, so it was like a special thing for me, you know. And my dad and I got us second row seats. But the most notable thing about that night was at the end, Todd says, "I don't want to be anywhere else but with you tonight in Cincinnati, Ohio." And I was like, "Fuck you." Fuck you. But you want to play at Bogarts, man? So that's very
Yeah. I know Dolly Parton, you know, she got all like, "Oh, come on, guys, don't put me in." And then she's like, "Okay, I'll show up." I was kind of hoping
really
Todd was. I
okay.
was kind of hoping Todd was going to show up, but you know.
Well, you'll remember because the best part of probably the best Rock Hall induction thing was the Todd Rundgren one because they did a really good job of not half-assing that. And you'll remember at the end they even went so far to include that clip from him at the Notre Dame speech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying, if elected, I will not serve.
Yep.
And good on the Rock Hall for at least having a sense of humor about.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great video. I mean, I thought it was just going to touch on just some of like the basic stuff, like "Hello, it's me," and
My
they went through
favorite-
everything. They went through everything. It was great.
Yeah. I got
favorite
emotional,
thing,
man. I was verklempt,
Wow.
legitimately. Yeah.
Wow. My favorite thing is not so much the induction, so much as before they put out the official video, they had like it might have been, I don't know who it was, but they put out like them recording it from their iPhone. And I got
that was me.
That was you. So I figured that was. I was about to say that might be your video, but
That's
anyway.
my video.
So then when they show a clip of him doing the tepte, like the interview piece of it, I just see I hear a voice and a finger go, "Fuck yeah!"
That's me. That's me.
And Zach goes,
That's me. That's
and I
me.
go, "Fuck yes, it's you, dude."
We must have been sitting pretty close, Zach.
Yeah,
I was like in the upper bowl, like left side.
Yeah, that's where I was too.
Yeah.
You just hear a voice go, "Fuck yeah!" and a number one finger up. That's so
I
good.
didn't expect to see that. I was
No,
like,
I would never in a million years would have guessed they even included 3 seconds of that.
Yeah.
masterpiece.
Yeah.
So,
It was a nice
they did
video.
really
And then when they put out the official version, it wasn't the whole thing that they played
really?
for us. No, like if you go to the Rock Hall one and you look at the clean version, not the one that I recorded with my cell phone, it's they cut a little bit of it out. Not a lot, but it was a noticeable amount.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was cool, man. I mean, I actually went to the Rock Hall the day before and they had a karaoke thing set up, and I sang "Bang the Drum," and I was like, you know what? If Todd's not going to sing at the ceremony, I'll sing Todd at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame while I'm here.
There
So,
you go. Yeah.
man, hard song to sing, that "Bang the Drum." You know, you don't appreciate Todd's vocal range until you try to sing his stuff. It's
I
Yeah.
was thinking about it the other day. I have to do like I don't want to work. Like I can't like do the register. I have to
yeah.
do like a gritty version of it to get it out.
Yeah, it's weird to think, you know, he started out as the guitarist in his first band. I mean, he sang a little bit in the Nas, but he never really, you know, he never really had aspirations to be this singer. But man, the way his voice evolved over his career, you know, going back to like that vocal performance on Pretending to Care. I mean, just such, you know, just such great stuff. Or Kindness, you know, on Second Wind. I mean, that was
Hmm.
just so many great, beautiful ballads where he just really, you know, rips your heart out. So
I think it's because I think I'm stealing from John Steinman a little bit the way that however he quoted it was perfect, but I'm going to butcher it. But I think it's something that has to do with how Todd hears an arrangement and he has to force himself to get to that. And even in the early days, like John, when we interviewed John Siegler, he was talking about like Todd has struggled to get it out. Like that whatever like major muscle that you need right here, Todd did not know how to get to it up until about Another Live era,
yeah,
where because he just wanted to be the guitar player, so he was just the guitar player the whole time. And then after that, he was just a recording guy, the studio guy during Run and Run Ballad, and then played piano and sang. And even then, it's still, I saw the light. Hello, it's me. Uh, but eventually, he got thrust into that position of being like, okay, I need to figure out how to be a real singer here.
yeah. I mean, Nearly Human is probably the peak is going to be Nearly Human. I mean, that's got his vocal performance on that is just mind blowing. Just some of the stuff he does on that,
Yeah, I agree. I would say
both the
Oxbow is up
ballads
there.
and the
Yeah.
you know, man, Hawking. I mean, just the
Yeah.
challenges behind that. But Can't Stop Running. You know, there's
Yeah.
another one that's just a great, just his phrasing. You know, all that stuff. It's good stuff.
I want to keep touching upon the '90s thing.
Hmm.
I let it stew a little bit. I think you you gave them a lot of credence because I'm a big sucker for the '90s top TR stuff. Like I had to take a step back and like reassess my situation when you said that. I think he had a lot going on in the '80s, and he was really busy. And it shows, and the tentacle analogy you used early was pretty apt to that. But throughout the '90s, I think he maybe because he didn't have the the major label backing him and the pressure that they put him on. And we were talking about the Second Wind poster earlier, and like clearly Warner Brothers really wanted to make their bank out of Second Wind at that time if they were putting out posters of him and his face. And but I wonder, I'm trying to figure out why I feel so adverse to that statement. It's maybe because Todd had always felt like he was doing the music and the projects, whether it be Utopia's, the video studio, the production work, and then later on what would become the play up against it.
Oh
These
yeah, I
all
forget that
thought,
was '90s.
yeah. Well, technically that was right before. That was '87.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Um,
because he did. But I mean, the
but
CD
the
came
but
out.
the
Yeah,
CD and then
yeah.
the cassette. I have the cassette too.
CD was an import too. That was pain in the ass to
Yeah,
find.
yeah.
God.
Um, I think he wanted to just focus on projects. No World Order is the best of both worlds for him. It was the project of getting out the Philips CDI and the MS-DOS version of that album, the interactive piece, and then the CDR with the individualists. Like that's what I grew up like on my Packard Bell machine in 1995, 1996 was watching those videos on the CDR. So
maybe he had a lot more room since he didn't have the pressure to focus on that.
Yeah, I think that it's I kind of divide Todd's career musically almost in geographic chunks when I think about it. So you have, you got the Nas, which is the early stuff. It's technically, he moved. Yeah, he gets out of Philadelphia. It's kind of the New York phase, but really the New York LA phase is going to be up through most of the Bearsville stuff. Then he goes out to San Francisco, so he had that whole San Francisco music scene for a while. Works with Bourgeois Tag and all that stuff, and gets the Tube, even back with the Tubes, and Nearly Human and Second Wind is recorded in San Francisco. So then he has the San Francisco phase, and and then he goes to the Hawaii phase, which to me the Hawaii phase is where he becomes more of the hermit that he was than when he lived in Woodstock. So he becomes immersed in these bigger projects that are larger than just records. Because I think he was just bored with making records. I think he'd made so many records. He was like, well, fuck it. I've made all these records. What can I do that's not just a record? And so that's No World Order. No World Order is like the same mentality, I think, as a Wizard of True Star. It's like, well, I made something, anything. And he made Run, he made Ballad, and those are all these great poppy albums, and they got wonderful songs, and they're Carole King-ish, or whatever you want to call it. Well, fuck it. I got to make something entirely different that's going to sonically challenge my listeners, blah, blah, blah. So been there, done that. So he can't really do Wizard again because he's done that. And he's got all this other stuff that he's done. So I think No World Order was just the next logical step, where he wanted that whole interactive. He wanted to marry his two loves, his love of computers, his love of music. But unfortunately, he was, I think, in way, people say this like it's so damn cliche, but in his case, it's true. He was ahead of his time. He was ahead of his time when it came to video. He's putting out music videos before MTV was around, and he could have capitalized on that. And he loses all the money that he earned on Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell building a video studio because he can't make it work financially. I mean, but this is 2 or 3 years before MTV is like, well, shit, now everybody's making videos. He's doing all this internet-based and computer interactive music before there was really a wide net as far as like everybody connected to the internet. I mean, this is still dial-up era,
Sure.
So it's, I don't know. And I think maybe there was some frustration involved. And the book says, they were really in very bad shape financially in the 90s. So, and I mean, there were periods of his career where he was playing 150, 200 seat venues and pulling up in a freaking van and doing all backline, That's gotta be pretty tough when you've played Nebworth,
Showing up with a desktop computer.
Yeah.
Even that's ahead of its time, man.
Yeah. Bad for good.
Going back, I thought it was a bigger quote, but we were talking about this before. Steinman says he thinks other people goes, luminous gratitude to Todd Rundgren, whose work and creativity was a source of constant amazement and wonder.
Yep, the album that should have been the second Meatloaf album.
You got Roger on synth, Todd on guitar.
Never heard of this.
Has him on bass.
This just the Jim Steinman solo album?
Yeah.
Well, the story behind that one is that they had recorded Bat Out of Hell. Nobody really expected to go anywhere. It kind of floundered for a year, and then it becomes Bat Out of Hell. So then Meatloaf had part of the reason that the album became so successful. To Meatloaf's credit, he toured relentlessly, and his live shows at the time were very over the top. He put in a lot of energy. The big thing was, I guess he'd like feign at the end of every show and, blah, 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 very whatever. I don't know how much of that was contrived, but I hate to speak ill of the dead. But anyhow, they have all these albums sold. They're like, well, now we got to make another one. So of course, it's kind of like Boston. Boston 2 is, Don't Look Back or whatever. So they need to make Bat Out of Hell 2. And they go in the studio to start work on it, and Meatloaf has completely lost his voice, and so I think I don't know, the way I read it, Paul Myers talks a lot about it in his book, but I think there was kind of this attitude like Todd was just like, oh, fuck it, if Meatloaf can't sing, Jim, just sing it, let's get done with it. Because I think Todd as a producer, he sort of has a reputation as a guy who's, like, whereas a David Foster is the ultimate perfectionist and he's going to get everything right if it takes 3 million takes to get it. Todd is more like, hey man, let's capture the moment, let's capture the magic, and then we're going to move on. Like, he doesn't have the attention span to sit in the studio with a band for months on end. We're an American band. He said in one interview, he's like, yeah, these guys showed up, the song was already written.
Yep.
I recorded it and it came out great. And we put out a single and it sold a bunch.
Yep.
Meatloaf was like showing up to the studio and here he is, he can't sing. And Todd's like, well, you're showing up in the studio, you're not prepared, you can't sing. Well, we're all here. I got to pay these guys. We'll make an album anyway. So then they just made it Jim Stein. And Jim, originally it was supposed to be Meatloaf and Jim Steinman, like dual. They were supposed to get equal billing. And the record company decided against that. So I think the cover of Bad Out of Hell is like, Meatloaf, and then it's got songs by Jim Steinman.
I've seen,
And then, they spelled Chasm's name wrong on that. Did they spell Chasm's name wrong on Bad for Good, by the way? Do you know?
Let's look.
Yeah, and what label did that come out on? Did that also come out in Cleveland?
Cleveland.
Yep.
I
It
don't.
also did. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But then what's interesting is when he finally does do Bat Out of Hell 2 years later, they pull like 4 or 5 songs from the Steinman record.
Okay, we're interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bad Out of Hell 2, who was that produced by?
Steinman, if I remember
Was
correctly.
produced by Steinman.
Steinman produces it, and then Todd does some
that's the one
background
with-
vocals. Chasm's on it.
Yeah, Chasm's on it. That's
His,
the one with
his name is spelled wrong.
on that
On
one
both
as well?
of them.
Yep, it is.
Wow.
Chasm is correct.
Sultan. Yeah.
It's Sultan. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they did that on Bad Out of Hell too. Bastards.
Wow, I can't believe they did it twice. Yeah, that's insane.
Well, Jim.
So yeah, I've been dwelling on I think he just became more focused on the projects than the music and the bankroll.
I mean, Liars, there was a lot of time between, like, if you think about it, the Individualist, to me, Individualist to Liars is really the 2 proper albums. You can't really count One Long Year and you can't count
No.
With a Twist.
Okay.
So there's that long period. I mean, he doesn't really make an album proper for, and then what do you got in the 90s for albums proper? You got technically Second Wind, but you could almost consider that 80s because it's the end of the Warner era.
No, that was recorded in 91.
So 90s, you got Second Wind, No World Order, right?
Yep,
No World Order.
95 was Individualist.
95 is Individualist.
Was
with a twist, but you can't
Yep.
count that because
I
it's
can't
all
count that.
remixed.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
So
then-
he only did 3 albums the whole decade.
That's interesting. And then he really only produced 1 album that decade too, right?
With Bad Religion.
Bad
Yeah.
Religion.
That was
Did he do was
99.
when was Pursuit of Happiness? Was that?
I don't
What about
know.
what's that one band? Splendor or whatever? Was
Yeah.
that in the 90s?
Maybe that was the 90s.
Yeah.
So just a few compared to the prior decade. He did the most,
Yeah, I think I got to figure. I'd have to look at the math. I don't have a computer in front of me, but I'm thinking the 90s are probably the least amount of studio albums proper. Although 2000 to 2010, you've got what? Liars, Arena.
Arena
Yep.
08. Johnson, which doesn't count.
Johnson doesn't count.
That's 2010-ish, 2011 maybe.
Yeah.
Splendor was
wait,
90s.
and then Reproduction, which doesn't count either.
Reproduction
Hold on,
does
man.
count.
Hold on. Wait. We could totally slept on Reconstructed in 2001, man. What are you doing?
He didn't even do that
the
album.
most-
that was
that's the
that
most-
was
that's
somebody.
the
That was a
most-
bunch of remixes by some DJs.
That's
He
the
didn't even
most
do that.
important. That's the most important piece.
Well, you know
of-
what is
of
important
all.
about that record is that cover. I think is the best cover.
Yes,
of-
it's easily the best. I have
I
that.
mean,
I have that
I
shirt.
love that visual. Yeah,
I have that shirt where he's like this.
yeah.
It's
He's
amazing.
like the Matrix or whatever. Yeah, I love.
it's amazing. I love it.
I love the artwork.
Yeah, that's the best part. And then Reproduction 2011. Yeah, not much. I don't like Arena. Let's talk about live shows some more. Tell
Okay.
me why I saw the Arena tour
I even saw the one leading up to it where it was still the same lineup, I think. I didn't care for that album. I go back, I still don't listen to Arena. Zach said to me recently, he was like, if you would rather listen to what was it, State or Arena? I was like, oh, State all day, baby. We're listening to Angry Birds and Party Liquor. We're not listening to Strike. Tell me more about that. I've talked with Elliot about this, and I've tried so many times with Arena.
Which Elliot? Elliot Aiken or
Yeah, we had an interview
yeah.
with him. We interviewed him.
He's an interesting character.
Very
It's good thing you didn't have a bleep button, right? Man, well, it's funny because my wife is not a big Todd fan, but she gets dragged to shows, and she still bitches to this day at how many times we saw Arena. I mean, I had to see that show at least 8 times. Off the top of my head, I can think of easily 8, but I mean, it may have been closer to 12 because he toured that thing for so long.
Yeah.
And that was another one. I don't know what the heck the deal was in terms of there was some kind of delay with the release because they performed the whole thing at Toddstock.
Yeah.
And then they took that band out on the road. And I mean, he was out so long, he changed. You remember Chasm wasn't on the first group, and then Chasm came later, and
They
Rachel
had that
Hayden
woman,
wasn't on it.
Hayden.
And then they had a second woman that came later from the B-52s. And I mean, whatever. I saw that show so many goddamn times that I started to really love the record. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier, that sometimes you listen to a recorded version. Like I don't know if this is going to be blasphemous, guys. Blasphemy warning, Todd fans. I don't think there's a song on Adventures in Utopia that sounds even half as good as the live version of anything on Adventures. I hate the way that album sounds. So I think Arena kind of falls in that same cat, but I love listening to Adventures because every time I listen to Adventures, I think of all the great live versions of those songs that exist. Okay. Every song on Adventures is very strong, but man, those live versions they just blow the studio versions out of the water, with the exception to Second Nature, which I don't even know if they ever performed it live. But Arena, what I wish Todd had done is I wish he'd taken the thing out for a year, played it like he did, and then taken that same band and gone in the studio and recorded it. I think that the songs are strong, and Courage is a wonderful poppy single and great song, but it just, the problem is it actually, have you ever heard the Nearly Human demos?
Yes. Yep.
So Arena sounds to me just like the Nearly Human demos in terms of quality. Like those Nearly Human demos, they're fully fleshed out, but they use electronic instruments.
Yeah.
So Arena just suffers from the fact that he has zero. He's recording a style which is arena rock, which the whole point of arena rock is it fills this arena and it has this big thunderous sound, but it just sounds too damn thin.
I got you.
But
I think that the comparison to the Nearly Human demos is really good for what you're trying to
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you listen to the demo, Can't Stop Running, I mean,
it's
compare
definitely
that to
missing
the album.
the je ne sais quoi that the album does, because that band had rehearsed it 30 something times together. That's very interesting.
Oh, by the time they were playing, by the time they were 2 years into that thing, I mean, I would show up to those shows going, my wife would be like, "How many times can you see this show?" And it's like, but by the end of the tour, they played it so much, you'd think that the familiarity would have breeded some contempt, but they were so good. That those shows were so good. Like I really just fell in love with the record at that point because the band was still having a little bit of fun with it, and it had such energy. I wish there was a good studio quality live recording of the Arena record that they would put out, because I think it would do the record more justice. And it's not on vinyl, so maybe they'll do that on vinyl. If you know anybody at Cleopatra, give them a call. Tell them Thom Jennings sent you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've tried so hard. What about the I didn't see Global live, but that doesn't have the same kind of thing to it, though, does it? where
No, but
like
it's designed. But Global was really designed to be a studio record. I mean, that's
okay,
like that's an
okay,
EDM record.
yeah,
EDM is by its very nature, it's computer driven. So in a live setting, it came off fine. But the reality was is it was more of like a DJ experience where you'd have the guy at a club and because he had Dame Funk on there, and then he had the Global Girls,
yeah,
and people fucking hated that show, like that were coming there for Hello It's Me and
yeah.
Can
Well,
We
yeah.
Still Be Friends. I mean, they'd come
I
in and they'd
saw
be
the
like,
state tour, and it was the
"Ah!"
same thing.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's
Uh,
State was even more off the rails. I mean, that
yeah.
was so hard. I preferred Global because I felt like it was a little less intense. State was a little too dark for me in terms
I
of
loved it. Oh, I
you
loved
know
it, dude.
the live
Uh,
show. I meant.
okay, yeah, I love the live show.
It's
I
great.
remember when 2/3 of the room left. It was amazing. I loved it. And then
Yeah.
he played No World Order like 1.1, and I was just like, yeah, I was like 20 years old. I was like, good, this is great.
Yeah,
Uh,
he does that medley at the end.
yeah.
The Hello It's Me, Can We
Hello,
Still Be
light
Friends or
friend.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and the backstory on that is that the promoters wouldn't book him unless they put in the contract that he had to play some of his hits. So
See
he
that
added that as a fuck you to
that
the promoters so that he
Yeah.
could. So if anybody asked, they're like, "Hey, what is Todd gonna play his hits?" And I think that did a little bit of damage to him for a while. What salvaged his live career was Ringo. I mean, it
mm,
just revitalized his. Yeah, and it's funny, like that whole Global White Knight, all that stuff. Man, I love those shows because
I
they're
love White
they're
Knight.
they're so
Yeah,
challenging. But
yeah.
you know, he finally had to default back to doing stuff that included more of the kind of hit friendly stuff. He hasn't. I don't know. I don't think he's going to tour Space Force, for example, which is kind of disappointing.
I think he had to get there though. When my parents saw him in '95, the crowd was really disappointed that he wouldn't play "Hello, It's Me." They're like, my dad remembers that there was a couple up there, and they go, "Play our song, play Hello, It's
Yeah,
Me," and
yeah.
he goes, "You want to hear that song? You can go play it you can buy the CD back there." And the
Yeah,
crowd
he
was just
he
like,
didn't
"Fuck,
play he didn't play that song for a long, long time. I mean, I
don't
want to
fucking blame
say,
him. It's the first
you
song he
know,
wrote.
it is what it
Fuck him.
is.
I wouldn't play it either.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like
I
a
don't
lot of
show up for
bands.
those. Like
Yeah.
even the state tour, even Hello Light Friends. When they start that, like I was 20 years old, I went with two friends. Um, and one of them knew Hello It's Me, the other one knew Leroy Boy. We got to get you one, whatever. And they definitely weren't gonna hear either of those, and I knew that. I was cool with it. But he started playing Hello Light Friends, and I go, okay, fuck this song. I'm not here for this. I'm gonna go around the back and try to meet Todd tonight. Okay, so it was me and two of my friends. Okay, and we went to the back of Bogarts. They go, okay, they're on the walkie-talkies. All right, the talent's coming. Guys, the three of you, can you stand across the street? No problem. Todd's going to be right over there. I'm going to be right here. He's going to come out after playing Hello Light Friends and say hi to James Barney, and I'm going to finally meet him. Keeps on walking. I said, Todd. My friends go, Todd, this guy's a huge fan. Go meet him. And Todd just gives me the Todd smile that I knew very well because I grew up watching Seth Smith. And then he just kept walking, and I go, oh, I'm not meeting Todd tonight. Okay, well, he'll be out. He'll be out eventually. And then this guy showed up next to me, and he's got a picture of Todd from the individual's album tour, and it's just covered with all these scribbles. And I go, "What's that, man?" And he goes, "Todd signed this 32 times since 1995. He's going to sign it for the 33rd time tonight." And I go, "Todd freaks." My dad warned me about these guys, and
Mm.
Todd never came out.
Yeah.
But even then, I was still like, I don't give a fuck about this. And when I saw the Individualist tour, not the album, the memoir show for the book
Book.
rather, yeah.
Yeah.
I own two copies of the book. I've never read either of them. He came out and he did the first half, and I didn't care. I remember the people. I was in the nosebleeds. I remember the people were like singing, "We gotta get you, woman." And I'm like, okay, this is great, yeah. But then later on, the second half of the set, he's playing Fair Warning, and I'm just in tears,
Yeah.
tears everywhere. And he did Fair Warning that night, and then he also did A Lost Horizon live with the full band, and that was really cool.
That was really
I had
cool.
I had never heard him do that before. But it's cool because he had to get to that point, like I was saying earlier, where he had to come to peace with it, of playing Hello It's Me and Leroy Boy and the hits, as it were. But then he also knew that there were Todd freaks like myself who wanted to hear Fair Warning and a little less Buffalo Grass.
Yeah, the only thing odd about that show is that it was so Bearsville. You know what I mean? Like it was really steeped in Bearsville stuff, which
Yeah.
is okay because and again he's done the album
It's a
shows,
large
he's done all
portion.
that stuff. You
It's a
know,
large portion. I mean, the Bear. If we had to go break it down, half of it is all Bearsville stuff. Like I'm staring at the Healing poster right here.
oh
I'm
for sure.
staring
I
at the
mean
Harry
that's
McCall poster right
that's the
there.
prolific period. That's the period where
Yeah.
most fans are. That's the stuff people want to hear. I mean, Space Force comes out. I wrote a review about it, and it's like some people are like, I haven't liked anything he's done since friggin' Nearly Human or whatever. So.
Weird.
You always got that part of your fan base, but that's not unusual either. I mean, there's studies that say, I think it's you get to it's like 32 or 33 or something, and at that point it becomes virtually impossible to really seek out new styles of music. I mean, look at Greta Van Fleet, for example. I mean, I just saw them opening up for Metallica, and they were just unashamedly ripping off Led Zeppelin in every way, shape, and form.
Of course.
And all the old people love it because then they go, "Oh, look at me, I'm cool, man. I'm 56 years old. What do you listen to, man? I listen to Greta Van Fleet."
Yeah, the best part about Greta Van Fleet, there was an interview with Robert Plant, and somebody asks him, "What do you think of Greta Van Fleet?" And he goes, "Oh, that singer. Well, he reminds me of a man that I used to know." And I'm like, oh my God, that's a perfect response. That response is not getting
That's
better.
perfect response.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, to the 30 point, Robert Smith had another quote that I'll butcher tonight. A great quote about he was afraid of putting something out after Disintegration because he was 30. And that's the last time that David Bowie put out something good when he was 30. And that was 1989.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
but I
weird.
don't agree. I don't agree. Even I was watching the POV tour earlier today. Some clip they were doing a stand for something, and then they went into fashion. It's awesome. It's so sick.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man is 36 at that point. April 21st, 1985. I was like, you would have been 36, going on 37 or so. And I was like, but I still love this album. This is still a solid 6, 7, 8 years after Hermit. And I do all those Todd chronological gymnastics in my head, and I just don't think that applies to him. Now, to the Space Force point, I did see somebody try to shit on the album in the Todd Rundgren subreddit and said he hasn't put out anything good since Liars. And then I had to go and take assessment in a different way and go, is that true? Liars is good from beginning to end, just like all of his other albums prior. Even White Knight, which I fucking love White Knight, I still hit next when it's really over. Now it's done. I fucking hate that song. So I'm taking my own consideration.
It's the beginning of the end. Yeah.
I fucking hate that.
Well, I think Global was a very strong release, to be honest with you. But I would say Liars is. I don't think he's put out an album better than Liars since Liars. So I don't know that that's necessarily an unfair criticism. Yeah, I mean Liars, but Liars is it's just one of those records. It's Wizard. I mean that was one of those records too. Something Anything is one of those records. Every artist has these kind of the poles in the tent, so to speak. and Liars was certainly one of them. I love Space Force. I think it's a fun record. I enjoy listening to it, but I mean, it's not, you know, it's not Liars. But Liars was, yeah. I mean, but Liars was, I think, too, the product of Todd not really having put anything out for a long time, and he maybe felt some pressure to do something. But sonically, it's great. The lyrics are good. Thematically, it's pretty cool. The tour was fantastic. I mean, the selection and the live stuff was I mean, man, that to me, oh man. I mean, I'd say Second Wind and Liars are probably the two strongest set lists when it
Wow.
comes to live shows that I've seen, for sure.
Yeah. So all right. So with that, top 5 best live shows, Todd or Utopia live shows you've seen.
Oh, well, top is always going to be the Moogie Klingman live show in Highline Ballroom, night 1. Wow, just such an emotional evening. Band was great. I mean, there's still recordings of it. Second night, which was still just, I don't know. You can't fake that kind of emotion. That was intense. Opening night of Wizard True Star, because of the fact that, Utopia reformed 3/4 of it, was great. It was really the last time I was able to see Roger Powell perform Utopia songs live. And it was a surprise. Nobody knew it was going to happen. So that's up there. First night of the acapella tour, pretty incredible. Just that tour in general. Second Wind in New York City. I actually stood next to Dana Carvey for that one, which
Wow.
was,
Weird.
yeah, it was
How cool
pretty
is that?
cool. It was very cool. He jumped up on stage and did a whole George W. Bush imitation thing, and there's recordings of that show out there. Just a fantastic one. And then a personal one. Don't want to get too deeply personal, but the opening night of the Individualist True Star tour in Atlanta. My daughter-in-law has been struggling with brain cancer, and they had found this tumor. And my son and her have been together for 16 years. She's the sweetest person. They, had a 1-year-old kid, and she was given 18 months to live when they found this tumor. And so they can't remove all of it, and then have to do brain scans after the first or the second operation to determine if it was a fast-growing tumor or a slow-growing one. And a fast-growing one would mean that she was done for, basically. And so I was in Atlanta opening night. It was the first scan she had post-operation, so they were going to determine what her prognosis was. And my son Tom, who's been to many shows with me, said, we need just one victory. We need this one scan to come back clean, that it's not a fast-growing tumor. And they said, I hope Todd plays that song tonight. It wasn't on the set list. And at the end of the evening, he played it. And I streamed the whole thing to my son.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty emotional on a lot of levels. So you had the emotion of the very first night of a pretty cool tour, and then that personal connection to that song, Just One Victory. And yeah, that was wild. I said I streamed the whole thing. I just FaceTimed him while they were singing it, because he had told me, he says, yeah, we got a clean scan, and he saw it. So that was pretty cool. So
awesome.
Those are the 5. There's many more, obviously. Those 14 arena shows. I mean, no.
Did you really go to 14 arena shows?
I really did.
Wow.
He had to tour it for 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I saw it.
That's when I saw him the most, was during those years.
Yeah.
That's why when you said Buffalo Grass, I was like, dude, I'm so fucking sick of Buffalo Grass after that fucking tour. And even when we saw him in Kent in July, the day before you got that record, the Liars record up there. Bastard. That's why I remember it so well. But he played Buffalo Grass that night, and I was just like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. He played arena in Rochester. So I lived between Rochester and Buffalo, New York. So he did the arena show in Rochester 4 times. And by the 4th time, I mean, there was less than 50 people, less than 50. I mean, that's how bad it was. And it just, everyone's all like, oh my God, dude, is he still doing that same damn show? Yeah, my wife was. I said she always gives me shit about that because we'll go. I'll go see Todd. She's like, how many times do you need to see him? I go. Well, he always puts on a different show. He's like, you watched it. You went to that arena show. How
Yeah.
many times? I'm like, well, I'll give you that. So
Yeah, my fiance, she gets she's lucky. I guess I'm lucky because she gets it. Like,
oh, my
there,
wife,
she's
my wife has a great. I don't mean to interrupt, but my wife has a great line. She tells friends because everyone goes, "Oh, I don't think it's weird that he's into this musician the way he is." And she said, she goes, "Well, I look at it this way: he could be into drugs, he could be into gambling,
yep,
prostitution.
yep,
He's a Todd Rundgren fan. Like I
yep,
could, like
Yeah.
I can live with that. You
yeah.
know."
My dad said the same thing to Chelsea. He could be on black tar heroin. You
That's
should
Yeah.
be lucky. You should be
uh,
lucky that he's into this guy and he has a lot of posters.
yeah,
Uh,
he could be
and is
smoking
really into
buffalo
it.
grass instead of
Yeah.
listening to it. So
Yep. And
yeah.
after that, we were cool. Um, that's really cool, man. Well, I'm excited that you have such a cultured story with Todd. I think it's
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure. I think the Toddcast is when we interview fans like yourself or Elliot or Bill. I think that aspect of the Toddcast has become like the ultimate search of just the revolution, the revolution of the music, like how people understand this character, or like in my case, like I've never met the guy. I just know he has like a frothy attitude, and he's also written some of the best lyrics that I've grown into. Um, but I'm trying to figure out like some ultimate meaning with it now, and I think the more that we talk to, or like Zach and I like meeting each other,
Hmm.
like I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out, and even we were talking about the Kate Bush thing earlier. It's like I'm trying to connect the dots of how does it reach some people, but other than that, it's Todd who.
Yeah, it's cilantro. I mean, some people think it tastes like soap, and some people really love it. I mean, music is subjective, and I firmly believe that music finds you at a time when you're most receptive to it.
Hmm.
And I'll close. I'm going to have to go at some point, so I'll
Yeah,
close with this story if you don't
sure.
mind. But
Go for it.
Yeah.
I've been writing music reviews and concert reviews for I don't know, close to 20 years now. And I got an email from a publicist asking me to cover a Drake show. And I don't like hip hop. I don't like any of that stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is kind of a big deal. It's sold out, blah, blah, it's Drake. And I wrote my editor and I said, listen, I got an opportunity to cover this Drake show. I said, but I want to pitch to you that I'm not going to write it as a traditional review. I want to write it as a review of a 48-year-old white guy going to a Drake show.
Yeah.
And he said, sure, that's a great angle. I'm totally fine with that. And so I'm at the show and I'm pretty much hating all the music, every bit of it. I didn't understand it. I don't understood when anybody saw it. But I looked out in the crowd and I looked at these kids and I looked at everybody around me and they'd play certain songs. There'd be that rush of recognition and just that super intensity. Everybody's going crazy. And I saw my 14-year-old me on that floor in the arena.
Yeah.
So I got that part of it. I'm like, and that's where I realized that, it's that experience that we're all looking for. It sometimes it's bigger than just the band. As much as we love Todd, and Todd has created this vehicle for our music, other artists can do the same thing with music that is entirely different. But that communal experience is so important. And again, it speaks to what's important to us. I found him at a time where I was in a deeply emotional state, heartbroken, depressed, and he kind of validated my feelings and helped me out of that. Some people may find, Van Halen at a time when they're driving fast cars, and it's like, Van Halen writes about fast cars. So that's the part that's cool, but then it's like you also feel that energy from other people. So like here we are, Todd fans talking, like we understand each other. We now speak a language. We're a sub community. and that's pretty cool too, you know. And what's Todd's involvement in that? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter because it's as much about about the fan community as it is about him. And I think that he, as an artist, understands his role, and he respects his fans, and he challenges us, and he does what he needs to do. And you know, I said, is he standoffish if you meet him in person? Maybe, but I think deep down inside, he's a pretty special guy, and he puts out some great music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He only wants to see if you'll give up on me.
We really appreciate you coming and joining with us today, Thom.
Of course.
We could talk for another hours about the TR,
Yeah.
our hero, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of shows that we'll see each other at, and we'll be able to do that in the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. We could do this again on the podcast if you want. I love to talk. So
Fantastic. And again, really big fan of tuning in with Thom. Keep doing that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Great,
I will.
great stuff.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, Thom.
All right, guys.
Before your phone dies, have a good one, brother.
You two guys, thank you both very much.
Thank you so much.
I had a blast.
Fantastic. All right, thanks again.
Sorry
Bye-bye.
about that Liars album, by the way. I'm gonna tell my brother-in-law as soon as my phone starts.
You should apologize, dude. I woke up early to get that.
I did too. Man.
All right, man. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
See you.